Okay, here's the deal. As our famous coach Marion Ansich would say, here's the deal. My name's Tom Prenovost. We are very, very honored that all of you showed up. I'm going to introduce my brother David, who's then going to introduce Stephen Kennedy. We're going to have an open mic, but because everybody has a TED story, we're going to ask you to keep it to 3 or 4 minutes. Okay, because that's the way Teddy was. A couple people have asked about this vest that you see some of the Prenovosts wearing. This is a vest and a coat of arms that we invented at the beach house after a couple of beers, because we have a golf tournament at the Prenovost Beach House, and so if you win, you get one of these vests. And it's miraculous because no one has ever won twice, and the vest just is owned by a whole bunch of people. And I'm sure that, I hope that tradition will continue. And so I'm not the talker in the family, by the way. Teddy was, but the guy who had us beat more than Teddy was, you know, at one point in time there were 5 brothers, and now there's these 2 that, you know, because only the good die young. Yeah. And so David and I are going to be here forever. So anyway, here is my younger brother, or as David Prenovost likes to say, there's no one older than you, Tom, which is sort of true. Here's David. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tom. And I always used to say to Teddy, I said, or anybody that knew Teddy, I said, no. Teddy's brothers, we're all older than Teddy. Teddy's the baby. We're all older than Teddy. I do have a little bit of a cold, so put up with it. I haven't been smoking. I just got a cold. Been through a little bit in the last couple weeks, so hang with me. So why this vest? I'll tell you a little story about how this vest, but it's a little wandering story, and I'll try and keep it less than 3 minutes. We're trying to keep everybody 3 minutes here. So I'm going to go over, so what? The beach house, I'll tell you the story about a beach house. Teddy's always interested in doing activities at the beach house. Teddy used to say the beach house is a series of activities. It's not really a vacation, just a series of activities. So Ted says, we check in on Saturday, and he says, hey, let's go run down to Balboa Pier and back. In fact, I want to race you. And he had been running. Grant you, I don't run anymore. I said, okay, sure, no problem. I'm going to say this is probably 10 years ago. So get the ages of Taylor and Tanner in your mind, okay? And so we run down there and run back. I'm going to say I won, because we were racing, to be honest with you. But, what the heck. Monday is the golf day. We got to go golfing, another series of events. We're a little sore, but we got to go golfing. So there's about 5 of us, five foursomes. Ted is taking up the last foursome with Taylor, Tanner, and Trey. And we all hit off the first tee, take off. We're out there golfing, thinking everything's okay. And Ted realizes he doesn't have enough golf balls. He doesn't have enough golf balls. So he decides to crawl underneath the chain link fence next to the golf range and run out onto the golf range and collect as many golf range balls as he possibly can. Now remember, we're a little stiff and sore from running down to Balboa Pier and back. Teddy falls down in the middle of the golf range, and his boys are standing there on the outside of the fence, shocked, yelling at him. Range balls are, this is a perspective from Taylor, Tanner, and Trey. Range balls are coming in all directions at Teddy. I mean, people are trying to hit him. He's laying down there, realizing that he can't get up. So Teddy army crawls and rolls off the golf range, back underneath the fence. We're out there about the 4th hole. And there's no carts on this course. This is a fine course, by the way. So they got pull carts. And we see Teddy with his arms over Taylor and Tanner. They're dragging the cart and dragging the carts and dragging Teddy. Teddy finally realizes that we see him, so he falls back to the ground again. And we run over to see him, and all I can hear him is this little whimper coming out of his, my back, my back. And I lean over to him, I go, what's wrong? He's face down on the edge of the golf course. He's thrown out his back. So we turn him over. Now remember, this is July. It's hot. Teddy's sweaty. I think most of the grass clippings and everything from the edge of the golf course, as we roll him over, they're just all stuck to his face. We take Teddy up, carry him out of there as best we can. We didn't finish that golf game. We took Teddy out to breakfast, and the rest of the beach house, Teddy was laid up with a bad back. True story, Teddy and his golf balls at the beach house. I'm going to introduce Stephen Kennedy, one of the Kennedys. Kennedys and the Prenovost kind of lined up together, kind of like the Nolans and the Prenovost. We all kind of grew up together in Whittier. And this is Stephen. This is Teddy's best friend. I noticed Stephen actually got in the pew where just the Prenovosts were supposed to be reserved. Anybody notice that? This guy right here, Stephen Kennedy.
It's better to ask for forgiveness, David. As true Teddy form, better to ask for forgiveness. Teddy was my best friend in life, and we started out together. My mother, Bunky Millicent Kennedy, was pregnant. I was 5 weeks ahead of Ted. And Kathleen, they were pregnant at the same time. I know that when our parents would go out to parties, and they just stick us in the playpen. So I was laying next to Ted's head from day one. And we continued that tradition for many years. As a matter of fact, Ted was like the only man that I ever slept with. But but our tradition in Mammoth, we didn't have very many beds in Mammoth, so Ted and I would always split the upstairs bedroom, and we'd sleep together. And everybody thought that was really cute, not very, not weird or anything like that. But you figure as we got older, we didn't smell so good, but Ted was just my favorite. We talked at least once a week, twice a week, 3 times a week. One of the greatest things, I had the honor of hearing him speak to me right before he went into his surgery. And his famous last words were, "I love you, Stephen. I'll see you on the other side." And I knew down in my heart that was going to be the last time I heard from him. But it was amazing, a circle of events that happened, and how this family came together, and all of you people, and the love that has been shown. Teddy Prenovost cast a long shadow of love throughout the world. And it was so shown last night at the Rosary with over 500 people there, and today the over-under being 1,000, I think we hit about 1,500. Teddy was in that coffin, he's looking down on us in glee and happiness because he knew he lived life right. He had a heart the size of his head. It was beautiful. And it was a large noggin, I tell you. When we were in high school, we were going out. It was Wednesday night. We had Wednesday night full pads football practice, and Teddy and I decided to go home, get some snacks before practice. And so we were driving down Greenleaf Avenue, and there was Chris Luton was our neighbor, and she had a car full of girls in front of us. So Ted and I were hanging out the window. We're like, "Hey, Chris," yelling like that. And I started turning. She takes a laugh, and I'm going, "Chris," like that. And Ted says, "Stop, Stephen, stop." I look up, and there's a truck coming right at us. I'm like, "Oh, God," boom, and he hits us full on. And Ted put his big head right through my windshield and broke it. And doggone it, nothing happened to Ted's head. He came back, he's like, "Ow, wow, that Woo, he wasn't even bleeding. And then he went out and he played nose guard that night, hitting guys again, Ted was so tough. He was really tough. And we used to love to get under each other's skin. I had bought a house on Merritt Lane after we graduated from Loyola and he graduated from Davis. We used to love to costume up. And so I was having a Halloween costume party. And a friend of ours named Paul Cabral had given us these identical green suits that he worked at Nordstrom's. And he gave them to us like years before. So Ted called me up and he says, "Hey, Steven, what are we wearing tonight?" I said, I'm going to be a waste engineer. What are you going to wear? He said, "Oh, I don't know. I'm working on it. I'm going to get something really good." So I spent all day dressing this suit up and putting rhinestones on it and, waste engineer and all this Steven. And sure enough, here comes Ted through the door at the party dressed exactly the same way. And he's in the green suit. And just to get under my skin, he's like, "We're twinsies, right?" I'm like, "No, we're not twinsies. This is my idea." So that night ended in a big brawl in the front yard. And I learned then that my friend Ted had grown to be so much stronger than me. When we were dancing in the front room, and he tried to do a Fred Astaire move, and he ran up the wall, put his foot through the wall, and I was like, "Damn you, Ted. I'm like, you're ruining my new house." And he's just laughing at me. And he's standing on the front yard, and I tackled him off the front yard, and I made him really mad. And he just grabbed me by the back of my neck, and I had this brand new lawn, and he just stubbed my face into the grass. He's like, "Eat dirt, Steven, eat dirt, eat dirt." And I realized, boy, don't mess with Ted. He's a lot stronger. But Ted was a nice guy. I think I was the meaner one of the two. Ted just didn't have a mean bone in his heart. He was truly a gentle giant, and he loved everyone so much. But there's just so many things about the love that we shared. But the one love that Ted shared was with Dana late in his life, and he really loved Dana, and you've been such a rock. But I'd like to tell the true story about how you guys met. Teddy let me in on a little secret, and I get a little emotional when I say it, but so I had put it into a limerick, so I thought I'd sing it to you. So this is the real story about how Teddy Ballgame met Dana. It goes something like this. Well, Teddy dressed all in his kilt, left the bar one evening fair. You could tell by the way he'd walked that he drunk more than his share. He wandered on until he could no longer keep his feet. He stumbled off into the grass to sleep beside the street. About that time, Dana and some gals were passing by. Dana said to the others with a twinkle in her eye, "See young sleeping Teddy, so strong and handsome built. I wonder if it's true that he wears nothing 'neath his kilt." Well, Dana crept up on our sleeping Teddy, quiet as could be. She lifted up his kilt an inch or two so she could see. Lo and behold, what met her view beneath his lovely skirt was nothing more than God had graced him with upon his birth. Oh, she marveled for a moment, and she said, "We must be gone, but I'll leave him a souvenir before we travel on." As a gift, she left her blue silk ribbon tied into a bow. Around the bonny star, Teddy's kilt did lift and show. Ring ding dilly-i-di-o, ring di dilly-i-o. Around the bonny star, Teddy's kilt did lift and show. Well, Teddy, he woke to nature's call. He headed for a tree. He lifted up his kilt and gawked at what he then did see. And in a cheerful voice he cried, for that sight before his eyes, "I don't know where you've been, my lad, but I see you've won first prize." That's a true story. It's God's honest truth. Now, if anybody can back that up, it's my brother, Timmy Kennedy. Timmy Kennedy, would you come up, please? And Timmy's got a few words. Where is Timmy? Timmy can't sing, but he can sure dance. I've got a couple of guys that I picked out to say at least 3 minutes, and then after that, we can have an open mic. Timmy's here.
Can't top that. Hi, I'm Timmy Kennedy, and I'm his big brother. And Teddy Ballgame. Teddy Ballgame was in the ball game. Not only was he in the ball game, but he was the ball game. And I've just kind of had this thought on my mind for a while. Of course, many years, should be longer than that, but the mystery of faith is something that I've kind of shared with people quite a bit here. And, as I think about Teddy, it's like, okay, so where did we grow up? Kevin, my brother Kevin's sitting over there. Kevin had the 1964 Chevelle Malibu Super Sport with the 4 on the floor, a 283 bored out to a 292 with glass packs and mag wheels, and an 8-track tape player. Could have been a 4-track tape player at that time. And we used to go over and pick up Bruce and Michelle and go to St. Paul High School together. And then when Kevin and Bruce graduated, I bought the Chevelle from Kevin for $540. And you can't buy a pair of tennis shoes for that today. And I think that's when I put the 8-track tape player into it. And so I was talking to David Prenovost with this pretty little vest on today, and I told David David brought it up to me. He says, every time I think of that Chevelle, I think of nothing but Chicago music, the music from Chicago. But at any rate, so I drove David and Michelle and Annette to school for 2 years. And then my brother Matt got a Chevelle, and he drove David and Annette to school after that. So our families have been co-families. We've done, and all the Prenovosts got caught by our mom and dad, and we got caught by his mom and dad. So Teddy, today I want to say something. The boys today, Taylor and Tanner and Trey and Brianna. Today, that was just incredible at that service today. You kids talking, incredible. You kids were so articulate and so eloquent with what you had to say about your father today. My son Kerry was saying as we were driving over here, he said, I felt like I was in a movie, and I knew the movie because I knew Teddy, but listening to those 4 kids talk about Teddy, talk about their father and the way they talked about their father and their love of their father and the time of their father, what they talked about how Teddy spelled love was just incredible. And then what Father said today towards the end when he talked about how Teddy was reflective. And since everything's taken place in the last 2 weeks here, that's what struck me about when I thought back about Teddy. And I thought about how Teddy was reflective. He really was. And Teddy always treated me like a big brother, and he treated me like a mentor. He always did. He always made me feel that way. And even though some of the times it was in some of the craziest times. I can't, how are you? By the way, Janice says hello. She was here. Especially in Mammoth, and I'd be there with all the guys. And Teddy had a way of always asking me. He would always look up and he'd say, I think we need some Timmy wisdom right now. And, it took me a while to and I thought, and I would always stop and ponder, and I thought, I better come up with something really wise. I better come up with some wisdom. Because if this guy wants to ask me for some wisdom, I don't want to BS it around. I want to come up with something that's pretty wise. And so, when Father talked about him being reflective today, and, as we've all gone through this pain and this incredible event and losing Teddy, and just the way we did, and, I think of the mystery of faith. And to me, I look up and I say, did God say oops? Was that kind of an oops? Was that supposed to be the room 301 instead of 302? And so, as I've talked with my family members and other people, we've all talked about Teddy and what was going on and how incredible it was. But I have to think that, God does have a plan. Even if God says oops, God does have a plan for all of us. And the one thing that I could say as I talk to my brothers, I talk to others, and talk to family and everybody else, I thought, this is something we're all going to grow with. We're all going to grow by this event. And Teddy's our guide through this growth event in our lives. And that's really what Teddy was about. When you heard his children talk about him today, you heard Father talk about him today, and I think of that, what I've known Teddy, and when I think, okay, if Teddy was to ask me today, we need some Timmy wisdom, what am I going to say that's wise? And what's Teddy going to want to hear from me that's wise? And what Teddy's going to say is that, you know, God's going to give us tests. And he's going to give everybody a test, but he's never going to give us a test that he knows that we can't pass the test. As long as we reach deep down and we find our faith, whatever our faith is, and we find our faith. And if we call upon our faith, we'll grow with this experience, and we'll grow with Teddy as our guide. And I think that's the beauty of the things that I heard today, and that's what I have to say about Teddy. And I hope that Teddy thinks I gave some good Teddy wisdom today. Thank you.
It's awesome, Timmy. I love last night. Tim Smith started out talking at the Rosary that this was going to be a bigger than life event, and today it's proven to be bigger than life. And I love where he said, "My name is Tim, and I love Teddy. My name is Stephen Kennedy, and I love Teddy." And recently, just joining into this 12-step program, I'd like you all to join in with me. State your name. I am Stephen, and I love Teddy. I am, and I love Teddy. Teddy was loved, and such a wonderful guy. We have another wonderful man who was very close to Teddy. Matter of fact, they used to talk every single day. I wasn't aware of this. I would have been really jealous if I knew this was going on. But David Ortega and Ted used to talk at 4 o'clock every day when David was on his ride home, because David doesn't like listening to the radio, apparently. Here we go.
Thank you, Stephen. All right, so I'm late to the game, let's just say, because Steve and Ted knew each other since the playpen. My wife and Ted have known each other since kindergarten. And so I came in high school and just to give you a quick understanding, I grew up in Boyle Heights, and I grew up in East LA and also in Rosemead. And so I come out to St. Paul where all the rich kids were, right? And so I hang out with Steve and Ted, and it is the funnest thing I've ever done. It's one of those things where you look at Steve and Ted and you say, "Oh, hey, what about we do this?" And Steve and Ted go, "Okay, yeah, all right." And then Rick Castillo and Andy and everybody, "Yeah, let's go do that. Let's and then we just go do stuff. It is the funnest group of guys to be involved in. Well, Teddy and I ended up becoming really good friends because our lives were intertwined. After St. Paul, he was my nose guard, and I always kidded him that he always had deep third as the nose guard, and I'm like, "What are you doing back there, dude? Get your butt up." So Ted and I went off to play college football. I was at Berkeley, and I was at Cal, and he was at Davis. So our games were always, back in the heyday when every game in the Pac-10 at that time was at 12:30 in the afternoon. So I'd play my game, and I'd drive up to Davis, and usually with Teresa, and we'd go up and see Ted play. And it was just fun as heck. We had the greatest time. So after that, we graduated. Teresa and Ted became lawyers. Our kids were born. Steve and Ted and I both had a trio baptism together. So my son David, Charlie Kennedy, and Taylor Prenovost were all baptized at the same time. And so we did it at St. Gregory the Great, where they all had done all of their sacraments. The only baptism with the 2 kegs. Okay, so it was a blast. We had fun, okay? But only in Prenovost Kennedy style, 2 kegs. So Teresa and I were talking the other day, and we couldn't believe that we're driving down for Ted's funeral. We just couldn't believe it. And we started talking, and she just says, I want everyone to know how fortunate we were to have him as our friend. How wonderful it was that he was godfather to my daughter, Gabrielle, and we were godparents to Trey and the whole bit. It's just such an honor and such a blessing. And we as Catholics understand what true blessings are in life. And Timmy, you're exactly right. With this, it's a fork in the road, but it's teaching us a lesson. And it's teaching us a lesson to have this. Look at everybody here. I mean, think about it. You don't do this for nothing. We have done this because we care, we love, and Ted showed us how to love. Most importantly. I'm not going to cry. I'll be all right. I love that guy. But love is what charges. So when I came in, me, Al, Steve, Louie all came down at about the same time last Sunday, 2 Sundays ago. And we go into the room, and there's Ted. And the boys are there, and it's not looking good. We walk in, and we all start crying. We're just bawling. And Gabrielle's with me, and we're just bawling, right? And then I just said it. I'll say to you what I told the kids. I said, hey, your dad was all about love. That's all it is. So we need to be about love, and that's just what it is. There's no machismo in this. There's none of that. It's all about love. So give of yourself, give to the next person, be there for each other. That's what we do. So with that, I'm crying now, Stevie. So hey, I love you guys. I have one more thing to do. Okay, so raise your hand and leave it up if you went to a football game with Ted. Put your hand up. Keep it up. Okay, for those of you who have it down, put your hand up if you played music or heard Ted play music. Put your hand up. See, that should be everybody right there. So as I said at Pop's funeral, and the same with Teddy, faith, football, family, right? Or faith, family, football. Yeah, there you go.
It's always the big guys that cry. It's always the big guys. I love that sentiment. Faith, family, football. Our rugby coach from Loyola, Dick Lehner, I'm not sure if he's still here or not, but he showed up. We hadn't seen Dick since I was at Loyola. And Ted, he wanted everybody to know that Teddy Ballgame was an incredible rugby player at Loyola. He played for 2 seasons. And he said there wasn't anything in the write-up about Ted playing rugby. So anyways, I'm just making the record straight. Ted was an incredible rugby player. And one day, where Ted and I, we tended to stick up for one another and get into, we were quick to get in fights with guys. And we were out in the rugby field, and there's this guy named Mike Minervini who went to Loyola High School. And he was one of these guys, he was like an 8-year senior, and he was still playing rugby. You know, he had more hair on his back than Ted, and he was like, and we were coming out, and Ted was down on the ground, and he kicked Ted kicked him in the shoulder, kicked him in the face. Ted's like, hey, like that. And he's like, well, just being smug. And Ted's like, I'm gonna get that guy. And Ted was playing break, and Minervini got the ball. I never saw a better stick in my life than Ted put on Minervini. He just drilled him and drove him into the ground. And at St. Paul, we never got a chance to beat Loyola, but that was a day that Ted and I danced over a Loyola cubby. We're like, you're down, man. We got you. So speaking of Loyola days, Teddy and I had an incredible roommate, and for starters, a next door neighbor, and he turned out to be one of the kids from above the boulevard in Whittier, but he lived life lower than we did. He actually grew up below Telegraph, I think. But Eric Singlin, would you come on up here and give a few words? The Dingle, everybody. Talk about larger than life. This man's larger than life here.
Hello, everybody. Eric Singlin, as Steve said. And you are a great friend of Teddy, by the way. Ted and Steve and I both transferred into Loyola when we were sophomores. And we ended up living right next door to each other. And when they found out we were both from Whittier, like he loves to tease me, when he found out where I lived, my dad was a doctor, I don't think he had much respect for us or me. He's like, oh, you live above the boulevard. Anyhow, so we became fast friends, and we found out we knew a bunch of people, but still there was always that shadow of doubt I think you guys had about the above the boulevard kid. Anyways, right here on this table in the center are all our Loyola classmates, bunch of fraternity brothers and pledge brothers. So this is all the Loyola crew. Sometimes he's not getting a lot of Loyola attention because he came from Davis and then came back to Loyola for a couple years and then took off again. But we were all pledge brothers, and as Stevie touched upon, occasionally the parties would get out of hand. I know. Easy. Your wife was, yeah. So my pledge class, the IOTA pledge class, a lot of us were bigger guys, and whenever the actives guys, which were smaller guys, and a fracas might break out, they'd say, "Get the IOTAs." Leading the way, Teddy ball game. He always took care of us, and we just had a blast. And one time a fracas broke out at, what was it, Alpine Village? And you took one not too good. Teddy was right there to take care of us all, and I sure miss him. But 30 years goes by real quick, and life gets in the way. And sometimes we forget to keep in touch, and I was lucky to have Ted in my life for those years, and we talked a bunch, and then family and friends start. But Loyola was a great time, but flag football wasn't enough for him anymore, so he went back to play football at UC Davis, and then went on to become a great lawyer. So from the guys from the Loyola crew and to the rest of you, I miss my Teddy ball game. Thanks very much.
So I want to go back to the neighborhood, and we all grew up in South Whittier, way below the boulevard. And we grew up around the Castanedos and the choirs, and we had a great time. We used to have Teddy and I had a paper route, which we never usually got through because we'd always stop at Teresa Castanedo's place, and her mom would have some kind of sweets, cookies out for us, and we'd have a good time. And but Teresa's younger brother was a great kid. He kind of followed us around with, just looking up to us, I know, and he was just a wonderful, younger brother to us. And we weren't really all that nice to him, but he says we were. I can't believe it. But he's John Chris from the old neighborhood. You kind of come up, John, and share some stories about Ted.
Payback's a bitch. I doubt I can literally hold the mic and speak as well as any of these guys did. Very eloquent and said some great things. Obviously growing up, those of us that are fortunate enough to be around people that you can remember and really hold on to throughout your whole life, it's a very special thing. My earliest memories is of Steve and Ted being there. I never had a big brother. I never had big brothers, but I had those two guys. So when they were in 7th and 8th grade, I was in 3rd and 4th grade, and probably one of the biggest treats for me was to be able to walk home with these guys. But of course, it was torturous on the walk home, okay? They weren't just gonna let me walk. I had to pay a price in order to walk home. So every day we'd go out the back, and we'd go down Trumbull, and I'd tag along. Sure enough, we'd get about 100 yards in, and there was a big set of ivy. And pretty much every day, I ended up in the ivy. Two guys, they'd grab both arms, both legs, 1, 2, 3, and I'd go. And then they would go sprinting up the street, and they'd take off on me. And then I'd get a wedgie, and it was usually from Steve or Ted, and it continued on. I got the opportunity to watch them play football at St. Paul, and when my turn came, I wanted to take the number of Ted because Ted was my hero. I was fortunate enough to follow in Ted's steps, and I ended up at Davis. And that summer leading up was just, I was really reflecting upon it, was just special. I got the opportunity to work out with Ted that whole summer. We would drive, I want to say it was like an 83 Oldsmobile, I think brownish in color, probably rusted. But he'd come by, he'd pick me up. We'd go over to La Habra High School. We'd work out over at La Habra High School. And anybody else who knows Ted knows that Ted is a very enterprising man. And at that time, he had started a company called IPH. I paint houses. And of course, Ted, John Chris. So, my family name, I go by John Chris. My father's name is John as well. So, anyways, John Chris, you got to come work with me also. Great. So we ended up at the Kennedy's house, and we painted houses over at the Kennedy's house. And Steve asked me a question the other day at the hospital. It was really funny, and it was, hey, did you ever get paid for that? And to this day, I honestly can't tell you if I did or if I didn't. But I got paid because I was able to hang out with Teddy. When I got to Davis, my dad drove me up, and he dropped me off at Ted's doorstep. And in true fashion of my father, he waited for about an hour or so, and he caught his wind, and he drove back home, and there I was with Ted. And Ted made me a spectacular dinner of Prego and spaghetti, and he taught me how to cook. And like most young guys growing up, I didn't pay attention to lessons that my parents had taught me either. So before I had left, remember kids, if there's any young kids here, there was no real ATMs or any of that other garbage. You actually had to write checks or go pay things in cash, okay? So of course my mom had tried to teach me how to write a check before I left. I got up there and I didn't know how to write a damn check. And so I was like, Ted, what am I gonna do? And we went to the B of A. Ted's like, hey, dumbass. And he just laughed at me, and he taught me how to write a check that day. And, some other just great things went on, some parties at his house where he may have christened me to run the front door and collect money. I may have split that money, probably as payment back for IPH. But, that year, that opportunity I got to spend with Ted was just, it was golden. And at Mr. Kennedy's funeral, and I'll end it here, myself, Ted, and Trey were sitting around and we were talking, and Ted, in his true nature, comes up and just gave me the biggest, warmest hug. It was like I hadn't missed a beat, and he started to tell Trey about how I followed him everywhere around. And, he was like bragging, Trey, this guy used to follow me everywhere. I was like his big brother, his mentor. And it was at that moment, Trey, I felt so lucky and so fortunate, to have that last conversation with Ted that way, and him to brag about how he mentored me around, and for you to be there it was awesome, So to Teddy Ballgame, I know he meant a lot to everybody. He meant the world to me, as I'm sure he did for everybody else. And Stephen, thank you so much for just letting me come up and share this. God bless Ted.
I just want to make sure, I haven't seen, is Al around here? Al Adamson? Oh, he's just waiting to come up here. First, going to tell a joke about Al. No, I'm just kidding.
Are you going to?
No. No, I'm not here. Everybody, Al Adamson, there's no other words to be said.
Here you go. Thanks, sir. First off, the Prenovost family, I'm going to face this way for a second. What happened, obviously, was absurdly tragic for all of us. And there's no right way to handle it. But you all handled it with a level of grace and inclusion that is beyond awesome. I am honored to be part of your clan, of your community. Thank you very much. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sad. I'm a very, very sad man. Ted and I go back to the play fields, the playgrounds of East Whittier off Santa Gertrudis. And I'm going to take you back because I'm a very, very important man to Teddy. He told me so. Over and over again. He referred to a pass that he threw in the fall of 1980. St. Gregory Huns versus the St. Bruno Tigers. Hey, middle school rivalry was for real. Hey, Millicent Kennedy, Bunky Kennedy can tell you about the history of the St. Bruno, St. Gregory rivalry. On this day, Teddy, the quarterback, threw a pass over one Al Adamson, caught by one Patrick Rockenbach to win the championship. Now, the reason I know that story so well is Ted told me 887 times. He told me that last month in December. I do not enjoy hearing it, but God, I wish I could hear it again. The following fall, Ted tried out for quarterback at St. Paul High School. Let me repeat that. Ted tried out for quarterback at St. Paul High School. Lasted all of 10 minutes. About a week later, he was playing his proper position of nose guard. I was playing quarterback. Louis Aguilera was playing quarterback. On this particular play, I took the snap, tried to turn around. My ankle didn't move. My ankle didn't move. His goal line, he had grabbed my ankle. I turn around, I'm trying to pull it up. Then it's like bee stings on my leg. I go, damn, what the hell's going on? Teddy's down there like a monkey pulling my leg hairs. I'm kicking him in the head. Stop that. Get him off me. So he gets up, give me that Teddy look. It's the first real impression I have of him. By the way, this is how alpha male courtship happens, for those of you who don't know. And I'm like, man, I got to deal with this dude. I got to deal with this dude. One more quick story. The next year, sophomore year, we're playing Loyola in the B game. So we might not have beat him in the A game, but in the B game. Ted is playing left guard. I'm playing quarterback. Ted's come back in the huddle. Ow, man, if you just run behind me, we can go, man. Come on, let's do it. By the way, as a sophomore quarterback at St. Paul High School, for those of you who know, calling an audible is not okay. It's not within the realm of possibility. Our audible call was white. So I go to line, and Ted's eyes are like this. Ow, go. And just don't say no to Ted, particularly when like this. Here I go. So I go to the right, I go, white 50. And I go to the left, white 50. Then I see Coach Amelo go, what? And I go, okay, I'm about to die. So I get the ball, turn around like this, hand the ball off. Boom, Benny Rodriguez breaks a tackle or two, runs 50 yards for a touchdown. Leaping as high as anybody, that big Teddy smile. I called it, I called it, I called it. So even though he wasn't playing quarterback, he was playing quarterback. And that was my Teddy. That was our Teddy. He did take control. One of the things that I'll take away, and I've heard it said, he was a creator. He was not a victim. When adversity struck his life, and it all strikes all our lives, I was honored to receive calls from him. I was honored to call him. He picks up the phone. He was a magician with time. He found time for all of us. I do not know how the heck he did it with 18 kids, 50 projects in various cities. I mean, he found the time. We've heard it time and again. And I'm so, so blessed that he found time for me. And I ask our kids every night to do gratitudes and affirmations, and they have a right and wrong. And I ask them to be kind. I ask them to be curious. I ask them to be creative. I ask them to be courageous. And I ask them to celebrate others. And that last part especially. Ted was all those things. But I felt every time I was in Ted's presence, he was honoring me. He made me feel good about who I was as a human being. He didn't want me to be different. He didn't want me to live according to his expectations. He was honoring me for who I was. Even in costume at 14,000 feet at Mammoth. Now, he was a truly, truly beautiful man. He was a great man. And as I wrap up, I'll say this. There's no doubt he looked down today. You three boys, Brianna, Dana. There's no doubt that he looked down and he was happy. He was happy. And there's a gentleman out of Harvard, Sean Aker, who's done a lot of research on happiness. What it takes to be a happy person. And the number one attribute of happy people, the quality of their support system. So what I'm going to leave you with is this. Ted was awesome. He was awesome not only because he was innately great. It's because he had a system of all you There was nowhere he could fall but in the arms of love. And that enabled him to be courageous, to be kind beyond the norm. He was great because you all are great. And I know I'm a better man because Ted was in my life. Thank you all for honoring my friend.
Good job. Nice work. Al, thank you. We had many things that we shared, Al, and I think Jennifer left so that we can safely talk about it, but Jennifer Wodarty was Al's girlfriend first, then she was my girlfriend, and then Ted got the prize at the end, but we had a lot of fun, and we had Taylor got up and took a picture with us in place of Teddy with Jennifer. So it was all good times. I see, Charlie, do you feel like coming to read your poem? No? Okay. All right. You guys, we are so blessed to have had Teddy in our life. We live with him, and all the things that Teddy was, we have a little bit of him in our heart everywhere. So I was just going to end this out and let everybody talk. I put a song together. Maybe a lot of the people, I think a lot of you heard it, but I thought I might just sing it again because it was so meaningful to me last night. And Teddy and I, we did a lot of music, and we played music, especially in Mammoth. And I just tell one little story about Teddy. When we were costuming up in Mammoth, and he and I were dressing up. I was an Indian, and he was a trapper, and we were joking, and we had partaken in too much libation, and I was going up on the chairlift, and I had gotten sick, and I was like, Ted, I can't do it. And he said, Stephen, our friends' fun depends on us. We have to perform. You got to get this together. And so he would rub my head. He's like, say, Stephen, I'll always be with you. I'll always be with you. Don't worry. And he kissed me on the forehead. I'll always be with you. And that was about 7 or 8 years ago, I think. And so we ended with that. I said, Teddy, I'll always be with you. He said, Stephen, I'll always be with you. And Teddy will be with all of us in our heart. After Teddy passed, the boys and I went down, and we went to this special rock down at Dana Point. And it's now a monument that all of us can go there and be with Teddy. And it says Teddy's Rock. And the week before Teddy passed, he sent me this picture of him standing on this rock with the waves behind him. And it was just such a peaceful picture. And to me, that just, I thought to kind of just, after Teddy passed, take the boys, let's go do something. And it turned out to be one of the most wonderful projects. We ended up, we didn't have the right tools the first day. The second day, we went down there with a generator and a grinder. And we're grinding this thing all in front of the National Whale Institute or something. It's like there's Ocean Institute. Yeah, it's right in front. We had to, just vandalizing. Yeah. So, yeah, that's right. So I'd like to just end up with this, because this song to me, I kind of took an old Irish song and manipulated the words and adapted it to Teddy and my life. So here it is again. So. The tears have all been shed now. We've said our last goodbye. His soul's been blessed and he's laid to rest. And it's now that I feel alone. He was more than just my brother, a teacher, my best friend. And he can still be heard in the tunes we shared, as I play them on my own. I never will forget him, for he made me hear what I am. And though he may be gone, memory lingers on. And I'll miss him, our old Teddy. As boys, we'd go walking by mountain, field, and stream, discovering things not known to kings, a secret between him and me. like the colors on a pheasant as he rises in the dawn, and how to fish and make a wish on Teddy's rock by the sea. I never will forget him, for he made me hear what I am. And though he may be gone, memory lingers on. And I'll miss him, old Teddy. I thought he'd live forever. He seems so big and strong. But the minutes fly and the years roll by for two friends all life long. And suddenly, when it happened, there was so much left unsaid. No second chance to tell him thanks for everything he's done. I never will forget him, for he made me hear what I am. And though he may be gone, memory lingers on. And we'll miss him, our old Teddy. God bless you all. Thank you. Oh, yeah, sorry. We're not ending it. Come on up here. Sorry about that. I would have waited. Hold on.
Yeah, no problem, Steve. I've been chasing my kids outside, and so I didn't. Oh, there's one of them right there. Here, come here, Cyrus. All right. It's okay, buddy. All right. My sweat sprayed on you? That's okay. All right. So, Uncle Ted he's 15 years old when I was born, and he's my godfather and my uncle, and he's a pretty amazing guy. When I was a child around 6 to 7 years old, Uncle Ted was part of my family. And I don't mean that I just saw him on birthdays and holidays. I mean, he lived in my parents' house. Specifically, he lived in my mom's side room. And if you've seen my mom's side room, you'd think that's pretty amazing in and of itself. He liked to make nachos and watch football on my parents' couch, tell me stories about how many injuries he sustained playing rugby and football, complete with knuckle cracking and joint, demonstrations just to show how serious he was injured. When I had to draw pictures of my family from school, Uncle Ted was drawn right there next to my mom and my dad and my siblings. At 7 years old, I thought he was going to live in my mom's side room forever, and that was just fine by me. In those awkward junior high years when I, didn't really fit in, I remember Uncle Teddy telling me not to worry in sort of a gentle way. He said, Dave, you're a skinny nerd. He says, guys like you always turned out to be the most successful, and then, everyone wants to be your friend then. So don't even worry about it. You're just going to grow out of it. My college, I really started getting into sailing, and our family had a consortium that, a series of brothers and sisters that owned boats, including Prenovost 1, Prenovost 2, La Liberte, and these were the most unseaworthy boats to ever touch the water. They broken engines, broken ladders, emergency ladders. I would mind you. Uncle Doug for years wanted to put an emergency, fire extinguisher on that boat, and when he finally put it on, that was a pretty good idea of him. The comedy that ensued was just endless, and Uncle Teddy loved taking out family and friends on these boats. I distinctly remember a beach house harbor cruise when Uncle Teddy and Uncle Dougie and myself, and there might have been some other cousins, I don't know, because we packed way too many Coors Lights. And, one thing led to another, and we ended up docking at Hooters for quite some time. And, that was, it, at least until Janelle finally figured out where we were. And then she came and picked us all up. When we got back to the beach house, my mom she just laid into Teddy. What a bad influence he was on me. My mom pulled me aside and says, your Uncle Teddy, you don't have to copy everything he does. That was a great sailing trip. Fast Teddy liked to have fun. Not just any kind of fun, but the kind of fun that you just pause for a minute and hesitate because you're not sure if the adventure you're about to have with Fast Teddy is just like the most fantastic idea in the world, or you're going to end up with a broken bone and a trip to the hospital. Fast Teddy was a go big or go home kind of guy. The Bunny Slopes is not where he hung out. He likes to ski off the top of Mammoth Mountain in costumes that blocked his vision, mostly. He liked to up the ante for sure. Be it whitewater rafting, surfing, sailing, boxing Tommy 3 and getting knocked out. Fast Teddy liked to be wild and fun and adventurous. He loved his family and his friends, and he'd do anything for them. So many family and friends have commented that, he was there for them when it really counted. When they needed someone to come through for them in a big way, Teddy was there. When they really, really needed help, when they needed love, Teddy was there to help them, get through the part of life that was keeping them down, and he was there to celebrate with them when they got through it too. And Uncle Teddy loved his boys and Bree too. Devoted to his kids, talked about great things they were doing and the bright futures ahead of them. Teddy also loved Dana. Thank you, Cyrus. When he told me about meeting Dana, I remember because he had this bounce in his voice. He was really excited, and he told me, he said, David, I gotta break up with a girlfriend so I can date her. And then he paused for a minute. He's like, actually, I gotta break up with a couple girlfriends. Yeah, I know it was. Yeah. And, thank you, Dana, for giving Uncle Teddy so much joy. I really, really appreciate it. Uncle Teddy liked to live big, and he dreamed big. He always encouraged me to dream big. And he had a talent for making people feel that their dreams were not just these implausible imaginations, but were real, attainable goals, no matter what the hurdles in between, them and their big dreams. He'd kind of pull you aside, and I'd tell him something crazy. Oh, yeah, I'm going to be, I'm going to own that house in Newport, the Gillette Brothers house, the one right on the ocean. And he's like, look at me straight in the eye and be like, David, that is amazing that you're going to do that. Total. If I had to describe Uncle Teddy in a word, I'd use the word life. Uncle Ted burst at the seams with life and turned seemingly otherwise ordinary days into memorable life experiences. He sought out life experiences, grabbing, a mariachi band player off the street and bringing him up to our beach house to jam with him in the living room. Throwing family parties, organizing surf competitions, dressing in crazy outfits and scaring the younger cousins. Just because... Losing my place here. Crazy costumes, dressing as a girl. Let's see here. Perhaps my most favorite memory was him making up songs about family members on the porch of the beach house to the tune of Blister in the Sun. And, I'm gonna pull out my phone in a minute and play just the beginning of that, because I want to share the opening of that song with everyone so we can all take a moment to think about what fun we all shared with Teddy and how much we owe it to him to continue to have fun and seize ordinary days and turn them into memorable life experiences. So I'm just going to play the beginning because it brings me back to the front porch of him telling me, you know, I was skinny, I was a nerd, that Tommy 3 smelled bad, that Evan should go home, my sister was a princess, and anything else that came to mind. So. Thank you, everyone.
Was lucky enough to have Teddy in my life from like since I can remember. One moment I wanted to share was this summer. Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to get this open. So this summer, Dana and Teddy came to visit us. And I remember I was sitting out on our porch. Okay, sorry. Porch. And I was trying to tan, which I can't because I'm a Kennedy and we don't tan. So I was kind of reading and writing, and Teddy came up to me and he asked me what I was reading, what I was writing, and it was kind of like in this moment we just had, and we like really connected, and I felt like he was listening to me. And so I read him some of the poetry that I was writing at the time. This isn't the exact one that I read him, but just from what everyone's been talking about the ocean and how he loved it, I think it's appropriate to share. So, for I am not a poet, so I let the ocean speak for me. How hard it is to define so much. Its presence is sedating, its alleviation courses within our veins. The only perfection I have yet to encounter is the border between this solid land and its aquatic distance. We know there is a world that exists beyond the shore, and yet God has protected it. The ocean is my home. There's nothing more mysterious than the sea, and I don't plan on finding it out. So meet me where the ocean touches the sky, and I swear I will be able to fly. The sky will fill with clouds of white, floating to an untouchable horizon in the distance, where the sun knows what secrets lay beyond the edge. Smell the sea, feel the sky. If you are lucky enough to live by the sea, you are lucky enough. Eternity is bound between the tides of the ocean. The waves will still crash upon the shore when we have perished. The ocean takes your breath away, so the nebulous depths of the ocean, the lithe effusion of the gentle waves following a storm. The ocean's majestic clarity is why I live to see another day. So, like what my dad was saying, I was actually going to mention, you guys going down and carving Teddy's name into his rock. And my dad told me a moment that him and Taylor had, and they were kind of standing on a rock, on his rock, and this huge wave was kind of coming towards them, and it was kind of scary, but they just stood there and they let it hit him, and for some reason my dad they looked at each other and they said, I think that was Teddy, he's just telling us to buck up, and just be better, and just, he's still with us. So, it's going to be hard at times. We're going to be sad and hopeless and feel really upset. But I don't think that Teddy's gone. And I think that, if anything, he's still in the waves. So, yeah.
Johnny Granahan.
Thank you, Steve. All right. My name is John Granahan, and let me apologize in advance before I start tearing up. I'm a mushy Irishman, and just had a thought with listening to the great fraternity of Loyola guys, that I think we're all in a fraternity that we have no control over. I think those of our parents that were quite amorous, that had 6, 8, 10 kids, the Prenovosts, the Naughtons, the Kennedys, the Granahans, and how we all kind of came together. After last night's, I live in Oceanside, and after last night's driving up through a fire hose, coming up with my wife last night and seeing the fantastic showing of everybody, I threw a guitar and I got an old beat-up guitar. For 6 years, I've been promising myself I'm going to learn how to play guitar. And now, I wish I was technically with it but I found a song that I kind of thought was very apropos called Lucky Now, and by Ryan Adams. And so that's the first song I'm going to learn. And I challenge us all to just grab an old beat-up guitar and learn that today I punched in 6 chords, or to learn 6 blues chords. And I have no musical ability whatsoever, but I'm going to learn because I'm blessed to have known Ted. And I'm just going to this is going to be the shortest little tribute to Ted, but I just want to share with you a Ted impression. I hadn't really hung with Ted in 30 years. Basically with my older sister Jeannie married Doug Prenovost, and I went to high school with Michelle and everybody else. And so thank you, St. Paul's, and thank you for our romantic parents. But, geez, lost my page. But we're just so lucky to have known Ted, and I got it back. So Ted calls me out of the blue. My kids go to Cathedral Catholic, and the very beginning of the season, he says, here we go, Johnny, what are you doing Friday night? My kids are playing Cathedral Catholic. Let's get together for the game. Tailgate party. And what do you say to Ted? You say, what time? And I'm so blessed to have had that little sliver of my life blessed by Ted that night, to hang with him and through the whole game, and just thank you, Ted, and thank you all for being a part of this family, and thank you, and that's it. Thanks.
Thanks, Johnny. So I didn't mean to end it earlier, but I do have one more song we can do after Don. But I got Don would like to come up and say a few things about Ted. And if there's anybody else that would like to say something, just maybe come up and stand up here, and we'll keep it short, 3 minutes.
This is not, yeah, that's right. But it could be my brother Gary getting the mic. So I thought I'd save you guys. They opened the borders and they let us come across from Arizona to California. Okay? We're the Prenovosts from Arizona. All right? But what I want to do here is, I've heard a lot of Ted stories, and I can't tell you, what I've heard just hits me in the heart. What I want to do is I want to address Ted's kids. Okay? The reason I want to address Ted's, Tom's lost a dad. I've lost a dad. Okay? We've been through it. But I can guarantee you this. You're going to look across the room. You're going to see somebody hugging somebody. You're going to say, oh, that's something my dad would do. Or you're going to look over here and you're going to see him putting his arm around somebody, and you're going to say, that's what my dad would do. Or you'd see somebody with a big smile on his face. My dad smiled just like that. All right? So up here, Ted will never be forgotten to you guys. All right? Every year, every hour, every minute, every second, Ted will be right here. That I can guarantee you. Okay? The other thing, and I heard it today in the church, and I heard it from all the kids, is time. My dad said to me a week before he passed away, he says, life is too short when it comes to family and friends. And he was talking about time. Time is too short. And that's all I'd like to say.
There's a few Prenovosts that don't have the big forehead. Did you notice the forehead right there? I think it's only David and I that stand up, David. See the resemblance there, the build and everything else. I got a bone to pick. What's that? I'm Jimmy Prenovost. there was 7 kids in the original Prenovost family, and Uncle Tom moved over to California. The rest of us are still in Arizona. And Ted came out to my house. I was trying to figure it out about 22 years ago. And I live in northern Arizona, and I raise cattle. And Ted wanted to get into the cattle business. So all you yuppies that went to that high school here, he wanted to get into that cattle business. He got on one of my horses, and I think the forehead was too heavy, so I got him back off. Went and got one of my bigger horses from a neighbor, put Ted on it, and we went and looked at the cattle. He invested in this one cow. I said, Ted, just go for one cow. Don't buy a herd, you know. Well, he said, money's tight. Tom pays me. And so I said, just get that one. Well, I still have that one cow. I took a picture of it before I left. See it there? And it's still hungry, Tom. And he said that you and his brothers were going to invest in it. So I still got that one cow that he invested in. Who do I call now to get... Oh. You want to look at your cow? But no, Ted was fun. Every time he came over to Arizona, he thought he was John Wayne. To find a cowboy hat to fit that forehead was a tough battle. But when he came over, there was 2 things he liked to do: look at his cow and shoot clay birds. We wouldn't let him shoot any other animals. And but anyways, I just want to say, you guys had a tough go. And I know the Prenovost family over in Arizona, our hearts are with you. There you go.
All right. We got one more. All right. You're going to sing, right? You're going to sing?
So my name's Joe Engler. I'm going to do you a favor and not sing. That wouldn't go over so well. I came up here with a bottle on my hand for a reason. I'm friends with Teddy from when we were freshmen at UC Davis, when we first started playing football. And to describe how many phone calls that I got from people saying, you're going to be there, pass on the love, we're all devastated. I want to pass on a happy thing, and I'm going to leave you with that. I'm going to be very brief. But Ted's still continuing to give, as we've all heard today. And the next big give is next Wednesday in San Francisco, because 2 months ago, Ted and I booked a restaurant in San Francisco. He is so excited about UC Davis football this year, and his son getting to play for his old coach, Dan Hawkins. And Taylor, I shared with you earlier that one of your dad's texts to me is, this is so cool. The Hawkins generation of football is just starting, and he coached me, and now he coaches you, and I think that's the first time that's ever happened at UC Davis. So he is so excited. We're having an alumni football lunch in San Francisco in North Beach this week. Ted's an organizer, and so needless to say, the phone is ringing off the hook with everybody that's coming. So it's a great tribute to Ted. I'd ask you just to raise whatever's in front of you, and here's to Ted.
All right. My plan was to end on a song. I still have a song, but I got Danny Smith. Danny Smith, real quick. Dan, you can be long if you want, Danny. You're good. Yeah. Start with I'm Danny Smith, and I love Ted.
I'm Dan Smith. I'm a cousin of Ted, and I love Ted. Well, when I came here a couple of days ago, I thought, gosh, there's no way any eulogy is going to be able to capture Ted. He's just too big a personality. But then last night, when the nieces and nephews spoke about Ted, it was just so touching. And then Tanner, Taylor, Trey was just amazing. And then all the eulogies today. So I know Ted's just so happy and proud, especially of the children today. And speaking about Ted, it was just amazing. So I was trying to think of a story about Ted as everyone else to talk about his greatest traits. And I thought of 16 years ago, my mom passed away, and we had a rosary service. And the priest gave us some rules and said, you can only have 3 people do eulogies, and we need to limit it to about 5 minutes each. Could you tell the people that? This is apropos since this eulogy has been going on for 2 hours, right? So Ted was not selected for the eulogy. However, when the third person, of course, is coming to sit down from the eulogy, who stands up in a packed church, walks to the front, but Ted. And he's got all these pieces of paper. And I don't know the lawyers in the house. I never saw him do a closing, but he had all the papers discombobulated. And honestly, the priest is looking at us, and it's uncomfortable because it wasn't planned. And Ted doesn't seem to bother him at all. So he's looking down and shuffling his papers. And then he looks up at everybody and says, relax. This is going to take a while. So after these long service, but then over the next 10 minutes, Ted gives the most moving, had us all laughing, had us all crying. And, it's one of the most memorable moments I have from my mom's own funeral. So what do we learn from that? First of all, Ted never believed the rules applied to him, right? I think Dana put it so nicely in her beautiful tribute when she said, Ted taught me how to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. And I had the benefit of going to the Prenovost, Normandin, and Daw get-together for Ted, and they all talked about Ted, and all of them said the same thing. Ted would just tell everyone that's not the rules. One person said Ted would tell her, you need to educate the judges on this because this is not how it's going to be. In Ted's world, it was only Ted's rules. The second thing, of course, of what's happened tonight is Ted's love of family and being able to do everything, wanting to do everything for family. And of course, that's not limited to a biological family. He had the biggest family of anybody I knew. Certainly the Kennedys, the Ortegas, St. Paul, the Ladera neighborhood community, Prenovost, Normandin, and Daw, the people that he worked with. Just had the biggest family of anyone I knew. And I was so touched by all the Facebook messages. They were all the same theme. When I was down, Teddy helped me out. So I just want to end by saying to Dana, first, thank you for being an angel in his life. Ted was a hurricane, and hurricanes without some anchor can create a lot of damage. But Dana was his anchor, and the love she gave him really let us all go on the Ted ride. And to his children, Tanner, Trey, Taylor, Brianna, each of you have a little bit of Ted in you, and we look forward to seeing that all grow. And we hope that you come to all of us, all of Ted's close friends, to be there for you. And finally, to the Prenovost family, if I look, I'll blow it, so I'll stay out here. But let me say, I think Uncle Tom and Aunt Kathleen would be so proud of the legacy that you carried on. Thank you.
Another Brian Prenovost.
So I love Ted so much. Ted was so special to me. If you guys were there last night, you heard some of the things I said about Ted. You know, growing up, I idolized him and all his friends. You know, Dave Ortega, Louis Butcher, Al Adamson, Steve Kennedy. I just thought they were the coolest guys. I'll never forget Al and Ted coming over and playing catch with me in the backyard at my dad's house, and that meant so much to me. Ted playing at UC Davis, it was like he played at Notre Dame, you know? And I just thought the world of him. You know, he used to beat me up when I was a little kid. He'd make me call him uncle. He'd make me say uncle. And once he stopped beating me up, you know, I just felt like Ted was mine. I felt like he was more than an uncle to me. He was like a brother. He was my family. He sent me so many songs of him playing, like of him playing that song. We've been through some things together, you know, so I'm always going to be able to look at that. I'm always going to keep this phone in. But I want to tell this story real quick. Dave kind of talked about it. It was the first and only Friday night fights at the beach house. So the beach house is, you know, a whole bunch of activities, one after another: golfing, fishing, surfing. And my Uncle Johnny had given me 2 pairs of boxing gloves, and I thought, okay, this is going to be the best idea ever. But I knew there was a lot of potential for me to get in a lot of trouble with the aunts and uncles. So, of course, the one uncle I knew who would have my back on this was Ted. So I showed Ted I got the boxing gloves, and I'm like, Ted, what do you think? Friday night fights, all the cousins will fight each other, and you'll be the ref. And you got to have my back with Aunt Michelle, because she is going to get so mad at me, and Aunt Annette is going to kill me, and this, you know, you got to have my back on this. And he goes, yeah, Brian, this is a great idea, but I don't want to be the ref. I want to be the main event. So all week long, we're planning who's going to fight who. And it was kind of a little secret because we couldn't really let it get out because Aunt Michelle was going to shut this down right off the bat. And the main event was going to be Tommy and Ted. Okay. There was a whole bunch of fights planned, but the first one that went off was Princess Monica beating the crap out of Sean Paul for 3 rounds. Unanimous decision. Monica beat him up real good. And that was about when Aunt Michelle started to catch on what was going on. And so this was going to get shut down pretty quick. So the other fight on the undercard was me and Michael Prenovost. And I knew from growing up with Michael, the little scraps we had, he was a bleeder. So there was only 2 rules. It was if somebody got knocked down, fight was over. If somebody got bloody, fight was over. So Ted was in my corner, and Michael was, I think, a senior in high school. So I was a couple years removed from high school, not as good a shape as Michael. So Ted goes, here's what you're going to do. You're going to let him come after you, let him punch on you, let him get worn out, then you're going to hit him right in the nose, and you're going to make him bleed. And I'm like, all right, Ted, I don't think that's a very good idea. So I went with that. The first round, Michael jumps all over me, and I'm really tired, and Michael's beating me up pretty good, and Ted gets me in the corner, and he looks at me, and he's shaking me, and he smacked me in the face, and he's going, you got him right where you want him. Look at him over there. And so, Tommy's in Michael's corner, and they're kind of like, they know they kind of got me, and I'm just going, Ted, this is not working. So he goes, no, just go out there, do the exact same thing, you'll be fine. So I let him punch on me some more. He's beating me up pretty good. You know, if it goes to decision now, Michael's going to win. I'm coming back. I'm just dead tired. I'm like, Ted, this is not working. I want to give up. He goes, no, you're doing fine. You're going to go in there. Michael's going to get tired. You're going to punch him in the nose. Right at the very end, Michael threw a couple punches. I could tell he was tired. I pop up. There he is right in front of me, right in the nose. Blood starts flowing. Fight ends in dramatic fashion. Ted picks me up, puts me on his shoulders. I'm walking around. So now it's Mike. Now here's the main event. Tommy's going to fight Ted. And I'm in Ted's corner, and I'm putting the gloves on him, and I'm hitting him in the chest and slapping him around, going, come on, Teddy, ball game. Nobody, Ted. Nobody. We 3 of us used to fight you, and you'd kill us. Are you going to let Tommy get you right now? And Ted's, eyes are all big, and he's had way too much to drink. And he's all sunburned and just exhausted. Taylor was just a little baby, and Taylor's in the corner looking at him, and I'm like, do it for Taylor. Come on, Ted. And so I go, Tommy's a southpaw, and I kind of knew a little bit about boxing, so I'm like, Ted, you got to move to your left. You got to throw left hooks, and you got to throw right hands, and watch out for his left hand. So bell rings. Ted goes running out, didn't listen to anything I said. He's winding up to throw this big haymaker, And there's Tommy just waiting for him with his slick southpaw, straight left to the face. Ted is in the middle of throwing his right hand hook. I'll never forget this. It was like slow motion. Just crumples down to the floor. Knocked out cold. He was out. Taylor's crying. Aunt Michelle's crying. That was the end of Friday Night Fights. And that's when I actually realized my uncle was human. And so that was my story.
I wish Ted would have been that bad when I was fighting him. Took me and made me eat dirt. So, we got one more coming up. Yeah. There you go. All right. Thank you, Steve.
Hey, my name is Rob Morris, and I'm representing the Santa Margarita football family. My oldest son played with Tanner, and my youngest, I was his coach with Trey at in the Pop Warner League, and it's an honor to know Ted, and I'm representing all the football dads that had coached with Ted, and just laughed with him nonstop. The guy was just amazing in terms of his football knowledge and his ability to coach and be just attracted to the kids and just motivating. And one thing that you don't know, and I love all the family stories, and that's awesome. But one of the things that I'm representing up here today is there's a certain thing that he did every game for these kids at the Santa Margarita football program, and Ted, we'd be tailgating, and you'd expect everything to go on as a tailgating good, all the football hype. And Ted would sit there, and all of a sudden he'd be wavering you over, and he'd be saying, "Hey, we've got to do the victory shots. We got to do a victory shot." And so Ted would wave everybody over, and God, he'd have this whole tequila was his victory shot deal, right? So he'd open up his trunk of his car because we had to be careful because we didn't want to be getting in trouble. So he'd open up his trunk of his car, whoop, and it would come open, and there would literally be 30 shots of tequila in the back of his car. And Ted would say, "Hey, it's time to do victory shots." And I'll never forget this, and this is leading up to my next story, but he had 30 victory shots for the football family. And everyone would partake, and we'd cheers the football program, and Tanner and Trey, and the whole group, Taylor, and as we did the victory shots, there was one thing that he wanted to make sure we knew about, and it was all about his boots. And I want you to know that as a Santa Margarita football dad and representing the whole group, that we're going to take those boots and we're going to memorialize the boots. And it was one of those things where you look at the boots, and he'd pull up his pant leg, and he'd have the boots on, and the zippers were out on the boots. And what he would do is he would take blue duct tape, and he would duct tape the boots. And he was so superstitious about the wind, about the boots, that he would keep duct taping over the top of the other duct tape. And he would keep duct taping them. So there was about an inch of duct tape on these boots. And I'm not kidding you, it was about an inch of duct tape on the top of the boots because the zipper was busted out. And he wouldn't want to change the duct tape or anything. So anyway, it was a beautiful thing that Ted had as a tradition, that he would wear the boots to every game, and he would watch every football game with the boots, and he would duct tape those boots. And as dads, it was a really special thing to see him wear those boots. And we're going to offer, as a Santa Margarita Scholarship Fund for the dads, we don't know what the amount is, but we're going to give him a scholarship at Santa Margarita for those boots and Ted Prenovost boots. So that's what we're going to do.
Joe McDonald, everybody. Joe was Joey was the young. He was just a little bit behind us. You were same year, 67, but he had the same problem that John Chris had. Ted and I kind of picked on Joey a little bit too much, but Joey was one of our favorites, and we used to go up to his house. Joey lived above the boulevard too, by the way, up in Friendly Hills. He had a really nice house with a great pool, and his dad was a doctor. With no further ado, Joey, go at it.
Hi, everybody. My name is Joe McDonald, and I came from a large Catholic family, 8 kids, 5 older sisters. So going to the Prenovosts was a different experience than being in the McDonald household. And one of my earliest memories was I used to go over to Ted's house all the time on Sarasota, all the time. Aunt Kathleen making us grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup. And she says, "You boys go to the bathroom." Okay. So I'm going to the bathroom. There I am, and Ted barges in. "What are you doing?" And he comes in, he's like, "Man, I gotta go." I'm like, "Ted, I'm not used to this, okay? 5 sisters, okay? What do you do?" He's like, "No, Joe, just watch this, watch this. We're gonna cross the streams." So, anytime I'm using the restroom, anytime I'm watching Ghostbusters, if you remember the climactic scene of the movie, I will think it's Ted. Within the past couple of weeks, I was watching Jaws, and Quint has that boat, the Orca. I started thinking about the Prenovost. I started thinking about the fishing trips. And Uncle Tom and Ted got me up at 5:30 in the morning. We got Egg McMuffins, and we went fishing. And Uncle Tom and Ted, trout, bass. Joe got my first sculpin, poisonous fish. But it was my first fish, and that was the first time, one of the first times I'd ever gone fishing. And the experience of being around Ted, the experience around the Prenovosts, is a spirit of inclusiveness for which I was always be grateful for. Steve and Ted, they were a year ahead of me. They played football. They started. I was scout team, and I went up against Steve in my junior year every practice and just got the snot beat out of me, big time. But after a while, I started to be able to learn to put my licks in, and I thought I'd be able to do the same thing to Ted. Wouldn't allow it, couldn't allow it, and the one thing that he taught me. When I did finally get the chance to start in my junior and senior year was that, Joe, the one thing you do, the first hit of the first play, you hit quick, you hit fast, and you hit hard, and you don't let your opponent forget you the first time, because then he's going to remember you the second time and every time thereafter. Ted and Steve were also in drama. I'm proud of the fact that I followed them as the lead in my musical in my senior year in the same way that they did. Steve did Oklahoma. What else did you do? Steve was the lead in Oklahoma. And then Ted stole the lead senior year doing My Fair Lady, and then it was me in Bye Bye Birdie. And it was and what I really appreciate about the both of them actually is not only did they include me with Dave Ortega, Rick Castillo, everybody in the neighborhood, Chris Luton, Therese Castaneda, Tracy Gambrossi, all of them, was I felt really weird about being in drama, but also being an athlete at the same time. And it was the courage that they gave me in order to play a ballet part in my sophomore year. Steve played the part of Curl in Oklahoma, and then there's a dream sequence, if you know the musical. I played Dream Curly, and I was with a professional ballet dancer, and the whole goal of the whole thing, I lifted her up in the air, she danced. Joe danced as little as possible, and who got all the credit? Because I lifted her up. But it was Ted and Steve that lifted me up those subsequent years because I was able to sing and dance and be an athlete and be a student because of the courage that they helped give me when I was growing up. And I just want to say thank you for the great turnout, and I'm very, very blessed. The guy that was an older brother to me, someone that I idolized, and someone that I dearly miss. Thank you.
John. All right, good.
Real quick, I'm John Ruick, brother-in-law to Ted and married to Michelle Prenovost, Ted's sister. And we've heard a lot of great things about Ted, but I want to share something that you might not be aware of. Ted did have a gambling addiction. And I'm going to relate in a couple of events, gambling events. I mean, he's supposed to set a great example for his kids, but he had this gambling problem. So, when we would leave on the annual fishing trip, we'd all be up at 5:30 in the morning. We get on the dock, we're heading on out, and we're sailing. Everything's kind of calm. It's going to be about, an hour and a half before we get out to where we actually drop the lines. And Ted would start coming around, and he starts hustling us. He says, "Are you in? Are you in? Well, am I in for what?" I said, $5. You going to be in?" I says, "Well, you got to tell me what it's for. What are we betting on here?" He says, "It's the over and under. 30 minutes, 20 minutes." I says, "For what, Ted?" "Sir, how long's it going to be till Michael Prenovost throws up?" And sure enough, we'd be less than 2 hours, and Michael Prenovost would be at the side of the boat. Over he goes. And Ted comes around and says, "What time is it? What time is it? What time is it? How much you in? How much you in for?" And then he'd collect, Was it a half an hour, 45 minutes? But this was, I don't know if Michael, did you go on the fishing boats after a couple of years? Because, every year it was poor old Michael Prenovost. He just couldn't hold it. And that wasn't it. Then there was another pool. We're still on this trip, and he says, "Are you in? Are you in?" I said, What for?" He says, "Well, there's a prize for the biggest fish, I says, "Well, okay, I don't know how it's going to go, but I'll put in money, so you go in for another $5 or whatever." And in the end, the crewmen, they have this little hook, and they hook the fish on either side, and they see which way it tips to see which is the biggest fish. And so there's a bait tank back here, and the guys are holding up the hook here, and it's Ted's fish time, and I see Ted, he's taking the fish, and he's kind of scooping it through the bait tank, kind of getting that fish full of s'mores. "Here's my fish! Let's weigh her in, let's see who wins this thing," So anyway, he created fun. And he did all this in a spirit of inclusiveness and making the best and making a wonderful time for everybody around him. And I think he modeled his life around someone, his father, Tom Sr. Tom Sr. had the same kind of outgoing, inclusive kind of, "Hey, John, how you doing?" Or, "Hey, Ted." I really think that was a big part of his life. And I think that that's what he's left for memories for his children, and I think he's got some lifelong examples for how you can choose to live your life the way you want, but he's giving you some great guidance. And so we're all going to miss him. I think we're all better, and our spirits are all better for having had the pleasure of spending time with him. So thank you very much.
I just thought that there's a song that I had that I think is very appropriate for Teddy, because Teddy loved the sea, and he was a sailor, especially the Prenovosts, all the Prenovosts and the sinking boats. And this is just a life song. It's called Voyage. And I'd like to, I guess, make sure I get everybody. I was going to end it up so everybody could get on their way, and thank everybody for being here today and showing all the love for Teddy. This is a song called Voyage, and I think it captures Ted's spirit. Teddy, you're a sailor, Dana's your first mate. All signed on together, you've coupled your fate. You haul up your anchor, determined not to fail. For the heart's treasure, together you set sail. With no maps to guide you, you've steered your own course. You rode out the storms as the winds hit gale force. You sat out the doldrums with patience and hope. While working together, you learned how to cope. Because life is an ocean and love is a boat, and in troubled water, it keeps you afloat. You started your voyage, it was just Teddy and you. And here gathered round, you have your own crew. And together you're in this relationship. You built it with care to last your whole trip. Your true destination wasn't marked on any chart, but you navigated the shores of the heart. Because life is an ocean and love is a boat, and in troubled water you kept it afloat. You started your voyage, it was just Teddy and you. And here gathered round, you have your own crew. Thank you, everyone. God bless Teddy, and God bless you all.
We've been through some things together with trunks of memories.